It's a real pleasure to be here among you in this fruitful atmosphere, I believe. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank Hakan for inviting me to this exciting event. I couldn't make it. Okay. No, I can't.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. Sorry. Looking at the main approach and goals of this forum, I find really meaningful to this that this event is being held in Istanbul. I mean, the question was why Istanbul? Thinking about the resonance of the past and spirit of the future, and of course all these themes, tradition, technology, cultural confluence, architectural expression, and all the others. I mean, to speak honestly, it's not very easy to find a city where all these themes are somehow seamlessly integrated. This unique and, let's say, multi-layered city will offer you, I believe, the opportunity of somehow re-evaluate these themes from many perspectives, many different perspectives. And I assume many of you have just arrived, and I want to tell you that many surprises wait you outside of the door. Okay, the title of today's talk, my talk, is Negotiating Objections by Tracing the Specifics of Context. Actually, I'll get back to this soon and provide some clarification, but now I'm going to give you some brief information about my architectural adventure, let's say, from the very beginning until now. Then I'm going to present you three projects as in a more detailed manner as some distinctive examples of our design approach together with the resources, I mean, the reasons and the arguments of them, and our understanding of context, which I believe is one of the primary components of our work. And on the other hand, I think it would be meaningful to evaluate these three projects in light of the main themes of this forum, even though not all of them are in Istanbul. Okay, speaking about context, maybe on one hand, we all know that we're living in a world which is becoming smaller and smaller day by day, and with the effects of widespread global tendencies, this old sphere is much more flattened now. I believe that this is the climate of all that is solid melts in the air, as Marshall Berman borrowed ingeniously from Karl Marx, the legendary deep thinker and oracle of the last century. Actually, this is not just an economic phenomenon. This lunatic evolution manipulates every corner of our lives, and it is producing a kind of cosmical epidemic. The world is burning out now. This time the truth melts into the air, like all other solids, and it won't be wrong to consider this situation as an epiphany of neocolonialism. I guess the majority of the audience is mainly formed by practicing architects and academics today. So a specific question or a certain subject could be meaningful to discuss at this moment. What could be the role of the architecture or the architect in this period within this global context? Okay, I'll get back to this a bit, to this very crucial question soon, but let's go to another era now. And I invite you to 1960s Turkey. My parents, who were both architects, they established their first office in Ankara, the capital city of Turkish Republic, and they were participating in architectural competitions in order to get a job. Finally, they won the first prize in the competition of an hospital, Zonguldak Hospital, in 1963. I'm not sure if it may be a sign, but I came to this earth right at the same time that they won this competition. After a couple of years, they moved to Istanbul and opened their main office there. I remember that on my teenage years, I was dreaming to become a professional car racer. I was doing that at that moment, but somehow I found myself in the architectural school in Istanbul. And just after my graduation from the University of Mimar Sinan, I went to US in late 80s and worked as a junior architect in Washington, D.C. in an office called Metcalf and Associates. It was for about a year. And after an extremely pleasant and fruitful period in Georgetown, once again, I was in Istanbul and joined my parents' office. And as a very brief summary, I can easily say that Arolat Architects, I mean, my parents' office was my principal school. But after 17 years of, let's say, hand in glove, I felt that I should graduate from this university too. In 2004, we established EAA, Emre Arolat Architecture, together with my partner Gonca. And it was somehow the forming period of Turkey's last generation progress, and we had lots of jobs at that time. Sorry. Just after 4 years, we became one of the most prolific offices of the country with more than 100 architects. But even with this large group, we were always very keen on conserving our ethos and spirit, and we tried so hard not to become a large-scale, toneless corporate office with a lack of soul. So once again, the name of this talk, of today's talk, is negotiating objections by using the specifics of context. Now I will briefly try to explain the reason for this. Actually, this situation is directly related to the question I have tried to bring up before. In this world we are in now, and especially at this time, I mean, how far can the boundaries of responsibility of an architect be expanded? It's a very crucial question, in my opinion. In AA, in our office, we ask this question again and again in every project that we encounter, and we try to turn this situation into an opportunity to question the usual truths or even accepted realities. And each time we strive to create a more socially beneficial environment, allowed, of course, by the scale and context of that project. And for this, I believe that it's necessary to first open a channel of objection. Here's where the word objection comes into play. But of course, objection alone does not produce a solution. Here you see me with the mayor of Istanbul trying to negotiate about some public space designs. If it can coincide, the objection, if it can coincide with a kind of compromise area that can be produced through the project, reaching the target, reaching a comprehensive societal benefit is possible at that time. And this process of a critical importance to us in forming the intellectual framework of our projects. With our design team, we often engage in deep discussions to produce a meaningful goodness, let's say, in each project, and we question the context in which the project is situated in a very broad sense, and conducting comprehensive analysis. In this way, I believe we managed to avoid somehow being influenced by many current and easily consumable architectural trends. And until now, in about 20 years, we designed more than 300 projects in more than 30 countries. Of course, not all of them are built. We designed at different scales, like Zorlu Center, nearly 1 million square meters of mixed use at the heart of Istanbul, or a single family house in Miami. We face various contexts, different countries and cities, different cultures, various urban patterns, like Bodrum, London, Tirana, Albania, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, or Dubai. Some other examples: a mosque and community center in Dubai, a housing complex in Oman, a mixed use in Baku, a cultural center in Bergama, or a refurbishment project in Brussels. Some high-rises, the St. Regis Hotel and the Contemporary Art Museum, all in Istanbul. Another museum project, this time in Moscow, a restaurant in South River, Miami, and an extremely ecologic approach for an office complex in Dubai. Some housing projects in Lisbon, Dubai, Kazan, Tatarstan, a museum and an ethnographic museum in Budapest, and some recent urban scale project in Saudi Arabia at the shores of Red Sea, or some airport terminals in various contexts such as Dalaman, Istanbul, and Cyprus. Through our practice, we have received many architectural awards such as Aga Khan Award, Mizvan Derohe Award for European Union, RIBA International Awards, and some others. As said, we are active in the academic world with tutorship and lectures. I ran several studios in Europe and US. For example, a couple of years ago, I ran a studio at Yale School of Architecture with my partner Gonca, with a group of well-respected architects such as Frank Gehry, Bob Stern, Eisenman, and Elia Zengelis. I'm a chartered member of RIBA, and I was elected as an honorary fellow in AIA. The plurality among our works, let's say, and somehow sensitive to each work regarding its specific situation, was the reason of the title for the book published by Rizzoli in New York, Context and Plurality, named by the editors Philip Giudidio and Suha Özkan. And our second book by Rizzoli has been published 4 years ago, pointing at increasing number of international works. This time it is named at Global and Local. And the last one, Scent of the Trees, is the name of our recent book, which is published by Oro, again in New York, with a brilliant text of Aaron Betsky. I find it quite different than others. In 2014, I mean, after 10 years that we established EAA, although we were very busy in Istanbul with some large-scale projects, we opened a second office in London. Since then, we are dealing with various kind of projects there, like this housing complex in Reading with some fragmented volumes in a very specific context. Some of them are under construction. Another one again in the same area. I will skip very fast there, trying to reach, I mean, we always trying to reach all the distinctive traces of the context in a somehow broader sense. We are also participating some invited competitions. This one was a modern art center in Moscow, and we were supposed to convert the old movie theater named Udarnik, a very special example of constructivist architecture designed by Oris Yofan. This one was in Qatar, Art Mill Museum in Doha. We were one of the shortlisted groups, but lost it in the final stage. A large-scale housing in Frankfurt, Germany, a residential project in Dubai, and some very recent competitions in Saudi Arabia. This is the hot point right now, as you may know. Another museum in Mecca. We won this competition a couple of years ago, but still waiting for a development. Another winning project, still silent, in Saudi, an experimental house with highly contextual approach trying to blend into the terrain. And some of these competitions, I mean, organized in Saudi Arabia, are really crazy. I'm more like urban scale, like this one, an island of 7 kilometers long with, it will be developed as a brand new spot with several hotels, residential and cultural functions. Or this one again, to create an alluring and sustainable master plan from scratch. Or that one, this time a touristic destination using the uniqueness of Red Sea. Okay, the first project that I'm going to present in a more detailed way today is the newly completed museum building in Istanbul. One of the entrepot buildings at Karaköy port, which used to be the main port area of the town, was given to Mimar Sinan University, the university that I'm graduated from, to be converted into the Museum of Painting and Sculpture. And the building contains one of the largest exhibition area in the city, and holds by far the largest collection of the country as well. Nearly 20,000 artworks that includes pieces starting from the Ottoman time and covering the whole Republican period together with some very recent ones. The building is located on the Bosphorus. I believe tomorrow you will see the city, very near to the Golden Horn, and the site was always an important port and industrial area through the history of the city. Tophane is the name of the area, and it means arsenal. It is coming from the 16th century's largest arsenal of the Ottoman Empire, and in 19th century, the majority of the buildings converted into Ford Motor Company's factory, and by the end of the 50s, 1950s, of course, this area was being used as the main port of the city. And this picture is from late 70s, and you see the main port. Despite being in the heart of Istanbul, the whole area was somehow segregated from the city since its first day. It served about 50 years, then became somehow the subject of an extensive transformation. And now, if you go there, you will see a totally different project. And this is the building which was assigned as the new museum. All these warehouses on the site were designed by the prominent architect Sedat Eldem in 50s, and I always believe that they had a very important meaning and a specific role and a specific, let's say, aura in the urban memory of Istanbul. On one hand, they were somehow following the roots of their ancestors. The distinct architectural character of the buildings borne by their form of scale was separating them from their surroundings, like the old days of the arsenal or the Ford factory. On the other hand, and very clearly, the exposed structural grid, three-dimensional structural grid of the facade, one of the most significant architectural elements, like the old Republican buildings. Yeah. It was the most characteristic feature of Sedat Eldem's, architect Eldem's architecture as an instrument of interpretation, referring to the repetitive timber structure of traditional Anatolian architecture. And you see some examples of his architecture now on left, and an image of an existing building on right. Of course, the scale is very different, but he was like fond of using this kind of a grid and this kind of a order in all his buildings. As it's seen here, the office block in the front and the warehouse part at the back juxtaposed to each other. So from the very beginning of the design process, I defended the idea of keeping the main character of the building. I'm using the word defending because very ironically, there was a massive pressure coming from various sections of the community. The majority of intelligentsia, let's say, including surprisingly members of Heritage Committee, was somehow forcing, or let's say persuading me to get rid of this building. They found this structure very simply heavy and ugly. Right at this moment, I would like to remind you one of two words I mentioned earlier: objection and negotiation. Sometimes even the architect needs to object to their colleagues. Okay, I'd like to emphasize that I'm counting on the phenomenon of superimposition for the growing cities. I strongly believe that cities are getting wealth by collecting different layers, collecting different eras layers of culture, layers of social classes, let's say, various colors of life experiences and layers of buildings from various times. So we decided to renovate the building by keeping its main character, but also by adding some new layers of current needs and ambitions. I can briefly say that it was a quite widespread discussion in the community. It took something like 2 years. Not only the intelligentsia, but the politicians, the press, and even man in the street was somehow a part of this atmosphere. Here in this picture, you see me with my very black hair about 12 years ago, explaining the project to the President Erdogan. He was at that time the prime minister. Okay, this story brings me back to an unforgettable day in different geography. I want to talk to you about that a bit. I heard one of the most sensational or even most astonishing statements of my life that day. It was a heavenly day in London. I was in a boat trip on the Thames and the sky was clear and I was enjoying the unique, let's say, fluxional and bedded kind of urban texture. Everything was getting nicer and nicer while I was admiring the stunning multi-layerness of the city. And somehow, somewhat later, I saw the National Theatre right in front of me. One of my favorites, to say the truth. I was captivated one more time. I mean, observing the volumetric composition of this legendary structure from that angle was a great privilege. And I was a big fan of this work of art since the first years of my architectural studies. And strolling through my memories, I couldn't take my eyes off the building. Just then, I heard our guide stating self-confidentially, "Ladies and gentlemen, now you see just in front of you the Royal National Theatre, the ugliest building of the town." I was in a deep shock. I attempted to say something. I looked around for a while, watched the happy faces of the other tourists, and wanted to object, but didn't say a word, and I gave up. You have to stop yourself to object sometimes. So you never know, not only in Istanbul, but modern or let's say maybe brutalist architecture can suffer everywhere, even in London. And honestly, it seems meaningful to me to reconsider this issue of context of the themes of this forum and based on these realities. Okay, let's go back to Istanbul now. In the beginning of design process, as a kind of prime decision, we conserved the reinforced concrete three-dimensional structure as it is, while the walls and slabs are removed in order to obtain a kind of, again, three-dimensional and totally naked structural grid, which will house the container galleries of the new museum. On the other hand, I always think that a museum shouldn't be a sealed box, which is only containing artworks. On the contrary, I mean, it should be permeable and accessible while enriching the public life around it. So the ground floor is designed as a kind of continuation of the public space, and the art galleries are arranged in clusters in the upper floors. Here we see the main atrium of the entrance area after the completion. And in that part, the floor slabs of the former office block are removed. And this space acts as the entrance and circulation core of the museum. With this move, the former structural grid became totally visible and reflects a kind of strong architectural character, reminding people the industrial background of the site. And visitors now enter the museum through this spacious hall, enhanced with some commercial units, workshop rooms, and public facilities, together with some free exhibitions. This is the ground floor organization. As we go up, the galleries start to appear, and they are accessed through the main circulation shaft. And visitors walk around the galleries and access each one separately. And they can experience the fluid space quality and enjoy the city view as they walk from one gallery to the other. I don't know how was your experience today. Uh, I heard that one of your colleagues went there today, and I'm very happy to hear his opinions. And this is what the interior gallery space looks like, one of them. The another one, I'm very happy about the interest of children. This is the temporary exhibition, one of the temporary exhibition galleries. They are located at the top portion of the museum in order to provide the necessary floor heights and flexibility for contemporary art. And various events, of course. So at the end result actually is not another shiny and iconic new museum building, maybe like many others. In fact, looking from the main road, one might think that nothing has been changed or nothing has been done there. From the other side, you see the containers as exhibition halls embedded into the existing structural grid. Gray and somehow natural and somehow industrial looking in the daytime, and lighted in color as the symbol of the port at nighttime. And this picture shows the current existing of the building of its context, in this context. Okay, the second project is the Museum Hotel Antakya. I know that one of your colleagues, Çiçek, is, her family is from Antakya. The hotel is located in this city at the southeast part of Turkey, southeast part of Turkey. I believe that this project can easily be considered as a subject of a discussion about the issue of cultural confluence and architectural expression as well. Anyway, during the early Roman period, Antakya or Antioch, with its ancient name, was the third largest city in the world. I can say that it's the cradle of civilization, and a local entrepreneur wanted to build a hotel on his land, which is located at the center of the town, near to the famous St. Pierre Church. And he made a deal with an international brand and stated the construction according to a very conventional, let's say, 400-room hotel brief with his former architect's project. But life was not very easy there. Wherever they were excavating, they were encountering some archaeological remains. Everybody was in trouble, indeed. The architect, the technical consultants from different disciplines, including one of the most prominent teams of archaeologists, they were all hoping to discover a considerable empty and convenient space to locate the hotel. But after 7 months of hard work, the team faced the reality. The nearly 20,000 square meter land was somehow nearly full of ruins. And this was extremely disappointing for the landowner, for the investor. This is the guy you can imagine. You can easily notice. He broke up with his architect, blaming him for not being sensitive enough about what was happening there. And he was somehow at the last exit and feeling kind of helpless. And this was the beginning of a long and challenging story for us, starting with an urgent call by a professor who was already in the scientific team. Then comes the process of objections and negotiations, one more time for me and for EAA, for my colleagues. This picture is from 2010, from my first visit to the site, and the scene was really incredible. Tons of layers of everywhere, a Roman bath, traces of different buildings, probably a big temple, and a bunch of incredibly bright mosaics. Actually, one of them sized more than 1,000 square meter, the biggest in-situ mosaic in the world, and some others with beautiful colors and patterns, sometimes even with hundreds of figures. The landowner was looking to my eyes, hoping to see a ray of hope, but I didn't want to be tricky. And very briefly, I said, you better forget about the project. Looking for a miraculous solution from me, he was extremely disappointed. It was getting late, and they took me for a dinner. Then we tasted local wine, talked about the magical situation of the land and the impossibility of building something there. But he was not convinced, and his disappointment was somehow upsetting. The next day, I woke up early in the morning and decided to stay one more day there. I went on the top of the hill, which is overlooking the city. The view was fascinating. And I walked down the narrow streets of the old town and went back to the site. I watched every corner of the land, hours and hours. And after some critical discussions with the team of archaeologists, some pictures appeared on my mind, and I told the owner that I can work for a concept design, saying that he should be ready for some very tough times ahead of us. And I warned the investor seriously about the difficulties of the process, lots of objections, budget exceeding, and extreme construction methods. Finally, he smiled at me and said he is ready for all of it. And next process was really challenging in order to deal with this unique situation. And with the name of a very sensitive archaeological conservation, we were set into a tough route of design and bureaucracy at the same time. Series of presentations, bunch of approvals, starting from the local authorities and heritage committee, going up to the ministry. I don't want to go into detail, but I can easily say that I made tens of presentations until we got the permission. Let's see quickly how we developed the design briefly. The plot was a kind of rectangular shape. It's about 100 to 200 meters. And the findings were clearly visible after a very deliberate archaeological excavation. Nearly the whole site was covered with layers of ruins, with some exceptions, fortunately. Yes, something that was discovered during the process of design just saved our lives. You see the picture on the left. This is from 1910. And you see the creek with yellow dotted line coming down from the mountain towards the city. And we discovered that the old river used to run through the site. And it was obvious that its bed was changed formerly to be aligned with the new road. And apparently, there were no findings along this old bed, and the fact was bringing a unique opportunity. On the borders of the plot with no findings, and along this old river course, there was enough ground for a series of columns, because the span now is not 100 meters, but it's about 50 meters, and it's doable somehow. There was enough ground, for this columns as the main structural element, and almost 25-meter deep pilotis was designed to carry the huge roof, which will protect the ruins, at the same time accommodate an important part of the building program, which normally is located on the ground floor, on the ground level, ballrooms, restaurants, spa, and even a roof garden with a swimming pool. And we suggested to create another level of structure down, a lighter and permeable one, which will hold the rooms. They will be stacked on 3 floors, just like prefabricated containers, and connected to each other with detached bridges. In addition to the lobby lounge and the gastronomic facilities that are located at the entrance level of the hotel, an open-air museum route with a relatively small indoor exhibition area was included in the program. I mean, that was a process of negotiation one more time with the client, because the client doesn't have any interest to build a museum there. Even it's a privately owned land, the museum, if you do this museum, this has to be donated to the Ministry of Culture, but still should be totally maintained by the owner. This is the law if you do that. So these drawings are showing clearly the relationship between public and private zones. I believe that dealing with this tension and converting this issue, public and private issue, to a positive potential by creating permeable spaces as much as possible are among the most alluring challenges of today's architecture. This is my personal opinion. It was like an utopian fantasy for some of us, maybe even for me also, but it came true because the rooms which has been which have been produced off-site came to the land on top of some giant-sized tracks, completely different than the conventional building techniques, and it's quite new for this area. Even the transportation issue was a fatal challenge, but replacing them to their, I mean, the rooms to their places with some very small margins, like 2 millimeters, was just a nightmare. But at the end, it came true. Uh, so it was a very challenging process. It was a very challenging thing for the doers as well. But anyway, the ground level, you see the two plans, the ground level plan above and the typical room floor below, quite fragmented, allowing unexpected visual perspectives for the visitors. You see 66 columns with diameter of 130 centimeter, reaching to the depth of 25 meters to reach the right level of soil, without touching any single piece of ruin, of course, thanks to the intense coordination with the archaeologists. But I should emphasize that the plans have been changed at least 10 times during the process, because every time that we excavate, we were finding something, and then we were changing the whole projects. You see the lower level circulation of the museum, which is totally open to public and separated from the hotel path. Just a quick recap of what we tried to do. This was the land after the drillings and the situation after the first stage of excavation. And you see 66 columns, which were often suffering to fix their exact positions, and the steel beams connecting the columns and creating a visibly permeable and permeable level of room boxes. And the main circulation path of the roof is somehow mimicking its direction, the direction of the old river, while conveying the diffuse natural light under itself and connecting some public areas through small courtyards. And after 10 years of struggle, the hotel and the museum have opened their doors. Instead of this time 400 room expectation of the owner, it was another challenge of, let's say, negotiation. This time we were able to fit half of this number, and he was okay with that. I think maybe he was not, but he didn't he didn't say anything. I think this was one of the most challenging process of my architectural career, and the opening was like very unexpected moment for me. You see some shots from the interior space, different levels of circulation paths. Below is the museum parkour and the circulation of the hotel above. One of the hotel restaurants at night, and the path reaching the interior part of the public museum. Now the museum is whole public, and the entrance of the museum part. The overall planning strategy allows a kind of considerable permeability and highly fluid space perception. These are from the rooms level. The visibility between the layers was one of the main issues of our design, and I was quite happy about the final situation actually. The lighting design was also an important factor. We worked with two different firms from Europe and from Turkey. And you see the hotel lobby and the famous giant size mosaic, and the main lobby, this time with a partial glass floor overlooking a very unique Pegasus mosaic. One more thing that I find quite important through this project is the ongoing restoration of the archaeological texture. I believe that this will break down the taboos of archaeology in our country, in Turkey, which was like an untouchable discipline until now, and help it to amalgamate with the community. Because I believe that in order to love something, you have to learn it first. And then if you don't understand anything, you cannot love it. Which I quite positive, since this sensitive process will create a kind of public awareness. These are some exterior shots. You see the mountain and the building together, the afternoon and the evening. We did also the interior design, again using mostly local material. The New York Times published a list for places to go in 2020, and this complex was among the 52 places to see, but they were not aware of pandemic at that time. And unfortunately, no one was expecting this catastrophe. The most destructive earthquake in the last 80 years happened in February 2023. This is Kurtuluş Street, one of the main arteries of the town where the Museum Hotel was located. And the disaster hit and erased the city from the map. You see the aerial views of the city before and after the earthquake. Another one not far from the hotel before and after. This time, the same New York Times put the same area in the front page, on the front page, with a totally opposite sense. And the Museum Hotel is still there, nearly without any major damage. Some national and international press published this miracle, but for what? Who would be willing to go a hotel standing like a spaceship in the middle of a kind of apocalyptic scenario? Now, after about 14 years, I work for Antakya once again. I started a foundation. The name is the Collective Mindset Antioch, together with some friends in February 23. It's a civil and independent platform having volunteers all around the world with various expertise. Urban planners, architects, engineers, sociologists, economists, lawyers, doctors, strategists, artists, pedagogues, and many experts from different disciplines. And I strongly believe that a similar question behind this enthusiasm. What could be the role of the architecture or the architect in this period within this context? Okay, now we are back in Istanbul for the last project. A couple of years ago, a foundation called Sancaklar got in touch with our office about a project for a new mosque. And to speak honestly, as a prejudgment, I thought they were looking for a replica of an Ottoman one, because in Turkey, even today, when you design a new mosque, the first thing that you have to face is the figurative, burdens of classical Ottoman mosque as a weird anachronism. I told them immediately that I'm not that kind of architect, and to speak honestly, this first meeting was finished in a very bad way. On the other hand, one more objection, let's say. On the other hand, I'm a big fan of Ottoman mosques. You will see many of them, I believe, and I find them extremely beautiful. But today, after half a millennium, even though the construction techniques are totally renewed, I find this expectation quite pathetic, actually. It's an issue that we face every day. And we are accustomed to see brand new replicas or even caricatures everywhere in the country. These are two examples from the latest part of the 20th century. The one on the left, a replica in Ankara, with more maybe reasonable proportions, but this time combined with a supermarket. And the one on the right, which is in Mersin, rather than minarets, you can easily think that 6 rockets will start their engines soon and go to the moon. Here on the left, you see the original, fantastic Selimiye Mosque from 16th century, one of the masterpieces of architect Sinan, we call him Mimar Sinan, in Edirne. And on the right, a brand new mosque built in 2010, this time in Istanbul, as a clumsy replica of its original. Perhaps worse than all of them, they named this new one as Mimar Sinan Mosque. He must be turning in his grave. A few days later, the head of the foundation, Sancaklar, called once again, and this time came to the office with this picture. They were waiting to build the mosque there, and this time I was extremely impressed by the lake and the untouched aura of the valley. And additionally, he said that they were ready to give me a realm of freedom. And they are ready to negotiate with me. And after a long discussion, I accepted the project. I was always interested in Islamic philosophy and trying to follow all kinds of evolutions in the field of Islamic place of worship. But however, I asked them some time, well, something like some months, 3 or 4 months, without drawing anything about the project, but only to make some more researches and readings to refresh my mind. And surprisingly, they accepted that. In the beginning of the design process, we went back to the roots, like we do always, to the antiquity in order to find a way for a real radicalization. And we read different versions of the Quran. We spoke with various Islamic scholars, and we analyzed examples of mosque buildings built in different eras. Then finally, we discovered that masjid simply means a place to pray and does not dictate any shape. It has to be clean, and that's the only condition. So in a way, anywhere on the earth can be a masjid or a praying place for Islam. And we discovered one more time that there is no formal definition for a mosque in Quran or in any other source. So instead of searching for new and extravagant forms, let's say, this time we tried to reach the essence. This was the essence of the ritual of praying. And on the other hand, we realized, due to the intense pressure of global capitalism, Islamic architecture is somehow passing through a dangerous period. The danger of losing its virtue, its identity, actually. A very good example of it, of this contamination is Mecca, where the Kaaba is the most sacred site in Islam. And over the years, Mecca has transformed from the center of the earth to the center of tourism. I think with this kind of intentions, we cannot talk about modesty, nobleness, or humility, or let's say unpretentiousness. They don't live here anymore. Take Sheikh Zayed Mosque in Abu Dhabi as an example. One of the largest landmarks of Islamic architecture, which became famous for having the biggest carpet in the world or the most bombastic chandelier. It's a place for diplomatic visits, a tourist attraction, a place to see and to be seen. It's a platform for Facebook or Instagram. Okay, let's go back to our subject now, the essence, once again, maybe with the mark of modesty, humbleness, and humility. Sancaklar Mosque is located at the outskirts of Istanbul. It's an initial photo of the site. As you can see, it has a lovely view overlooking the lake and a wide-looking landscape. Okay, as an important decision, we aim to, in the beginning of the process, we aim to discard all the cultural burdens which could affect the purity of our consciousness. And in this respect, we try to suppress the architectural language somehow, of course, as much as possible. And actually, it's not wrong to say that this mosque is trying to tackle with the formalistic attitudes of mosque architecture in Turkey and in other Islamic geographies. How we did it, as I told you shortly before, the site has a very mild slope, and we thought we could play with the topography just a little bit without spoiling this lovely field, but gently manipulating the ground like this. And we saw that we could turn the upper part into a courtyard with a view. By placing the main space below, main praying space below, we aimed for the building to disappear in the slope of the land. In this way, the whole building could turn into a part of the place. With the help of a simple slit, we got natural light into the main hall below. Here you see the current section of the main praying hall and the picture from the construction. The natural light, it was the first time that they took off the scaffolding and I saw the light coming inside. It was a brilliant moment for me. The natural light, which is washing the Qibla wall. This is the Qibla wall. Now we are, while approaching the land, we almost see nothing than a courtyard enclosed by horizontal walls and the vertical mass, which is the minaret, indeed, and it signifies the place. You see how lonely was the land in a way. And let's see it closer. There are 3 entrances, reds from upper level, and the blue one is lower level entrance, which serves also as elderly access. Now let me walk you from the courtyard and then through a lovely slope down to the prayer hall. This is the upper courtyard. Another angle. And the cascades following the natural slope, turning into stairs. We go down, and the lower level where you can find the entrances of the main hall, the ablution rooms, library, and the small tea corner. As in many others, natural materials as local stone and timber together with water are the main materials of this project. And like all the Islamic complexes, this is a place for praying as well as a space where locals can come together. Or a kind of, I was very keen about the outer spaces. It's kind of an outer meditation space. And of course, sometimes different users could enjoy the place. I like them. I mean, they come and go. They are very welcome. You see the Imam's house and the tea room. Let's go to the ground floor or lower level plan. Here you see the prayer hall with 3 entrances, 1 for women and 2 for men, ablution rooms, the Imam's house, the library, and the tea house and open air sitting areas. Entrances of the main hall and the ablution rooms here. And we are inside. You see the mimbar, mihrab, and the natural light washing the Qibla wall, reflect all kinds of colors as the one and only and main decoration of the space. In mosque, the areas designed, designated for women are usually in less favorable locations. However, in this one, they are on the contrary praying in the front row. This was one of the most challenging issues of cogency process from my side. To describe the process here, I think I can easily use the same 2 words once again, objection and negotiation. Especially on Friday, the mosque is full, and I'm very happy about the embracement of the community. Between you and me, it was a big challenge, and it was somehow a question mark in my mind. For good and all, I believe that this building opened the door slightly and turned at least a new and a very modest light on. A modest light for maybe a very small part of the world which is losing the sense of truth day by day. I'm going to ask the same question one more time, if you don't mind. What could be the role of the architecture or the architect in this period within this global context? So until now in EAA, in Istanbul or in London, nothing is so different. We are facing this situation just frontally. And even in this atmosphere, which is quite weird and uncanny, instead of being affirmative, or let's say a kind of current system's unvariant agent, without questioning what's going on, we believe that a producing architect could take a critical position and undertake a more opponent role. So once again, I would like to emphasize the importance of objection and negotiation. Coming to the end, let me read you a quotation, a small quotation from the Quran, even if I'm not an expert and I'm not a good believer. This part is my favorite. Don't walk upon the earth bragging. You can never cleave the earth, nor can you reach up to the mountains. Thank you for listening.